morning. Welcome to our keynote presentation for May. Yes, it is still May, so we're in the Asian Islander Appreciation Month. So today we have Gina Guo from Caterpillar to join us. And she has many years of experience with Chinese language and cultural mentoring for diverse groups of people. Her audiences have included Caterpillar employees, ICC, Tremont High School students, Boy Scouts, and 4-H groups. Quite a diversity. During her talk, she will use a non-traditional approach to draw relevant differences between Western and Chinese languages, culture, history, business etiquette, and social implications. Gina believes that all differences can be relatable and diversity enables critical thinking. So let's give a warm welcome to Gina today.
Can everyone hear me? Is the mic working? Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's such a thrill. So one of my biggest crowd so far, so I'm excited. My name is Gina Guo. I'm currently an engineer with Caterpillar for almost 7 years. Have a diverse experience in machine hydraulics and engine software. So let's talk about that today. Yeah, I still remember this is my 10th years in the United States. So I remember how excited I was 10 years ago when we get on the plane from my hometown Beijing to Chicago to pursue my master's degree of mechanical engineering. And what fascinates me the most is the very interesting perspective and differences in culture and how people behave. I think those are understanding what are these differences are the first step for adaptability. Do you know that a lot of people from Asia has a higher propensity to save, and by the end of their begin to retire age like 60, they would save up more than 25% of money than average Americans. Have you ever kind of, I see a lot of Asian faces, right? For American folks, do you guys ever get confused when someone was introducing their families and they would say, I have a daughter, his name is Amelia. Was that, what just happened? And also, when you glimpse through the Facebook of your Asian friend, you will see this humongous cathedral, and with them in there, that in the picture, that you rarely can recognize their facial expression. But our American friends will be like 80–90% on the screen and say, hey, I'm here, and this is that. And you say, where will we begin? Right? So by end of our speech, we will try to answer these questions. And I will try to cover in the sense of my experience growing up in China in terms of education, entertainment, housing, transportation, in a glance, right? But also to talk about the Chinese language. Why it's a fascinating thing that I always want to share with us, right? But more importantly is to see what are the differences and why the behaviors are different. So, trying to answer that, and then lastly, we're going to have a kind of a little quiz of what's the Eastern and Western cultures, in different nature, right? How we see things, perceive things in a different way. Before we go there, we're going to have a little fun part to kickstart. So look at this. We have 5 people in this little confined area, maybe. 4 in the background are smiling, and the 1 in the front is happy too. And look now what's happened. 4 in the background are kind of grouching a little bit, right? Obviously not happy, maybe. Let me ask you, raise your hand if you think the person in the front is happy. How many of you? Okay. Oh, wow. That's nice. This is exactly, my husband said it too. I was asking him, and he said, absolutely. I said, why are you so sure? He said, they are in the elevator, and the person in the front just passed gas. So others are suffering, and he is smiling, right? I always keep this case because it's a great to get audience engagement. I never miss the laughters. So I want to talk a little bit about China, but before that, to knowing a country, knowing a culture, I always like to, explain my experience, right? Born in 1985, this is when the Western culture started to get into a big city like Beijing, Shanghai, right? And as, me as the single child, which the single child policies are implied, I think, starting 1970s, right? Like everyone is actually single child in particular big cities. I felt pretty privileged because I have all the attention from my parents, and I have a lot of education resources, right? Especially in a big city. So my week was, when I was, 4 or 5 years old and on, always have ballet lessons, piano lessons. On Saturday, I would have like a math or English. The best treat of these extracurricular activities, every Saturday, I would eat 2 Big Mac. Right? This is the kind of like, okay, you've done all the hard work, and then now you can enjoy a little bit of Americanness, right? And what is more fascinating to me was my grandpa has this secret, cabinet that he just recorded a lot of the old, like 1950s, 60s movies, Hollywood movies, such as, Julie Andrews musicals, Gone with the Wind. And by the end, we have watched this over and over. I could remember every lyrics and every song. When I was 10 years old, my mom gave me a birthday gift, and a book by Ernest Hemingway. And since then, I was just falling in love with, his older books, right? His writing styles. What is more interesting, I was having this secret love for the post-impressionist artists and their work. I remember I had this book of, their book, have all their painting on there, and I would have a paper, sketch paper, next to that, and cut to the exact size, and then just try to duplicate that, right? Put a little sense to that, and then carefully put it in to the page. When I was 13 years old, I never forget the moment I stepped into the exhibition where the post-impressionism artists came in town in Beijing. I was totally stunned when I look at the works like Renoir, Degas, Van Gogh, Monet. I was like, I was in love at the time. I was totally memorized. As I was, really secretly in love with the neighbor boy, right? And I finally see him, one day. You might say, hey, this is just an impulse, right? Impulse. When we're in our adolescence, we always have that. But I maybe not agree with that. This is how Chinese are kind of have this cohesive experience. When they're emerging into something that's sprouting out, trickling down a little bit of this Western things. Doesn't matter if it's music, the movie, the book. They just totally absorbed into that. I can see the differences now, right? My girlfriend just called me and said, hey, I just watched the Grammy Award. Like everything is online. They have like Chinese Netflix company like playing real time, whatever that's had been broadcast in US, right? So things has been changed since then. But just that little bit of a handful of experiences and the impact has made to my life. That little bit of Westerners has made significant differences. Let's take a look at my hometown, Beijing. Okay, this is our area. This is Beijing. Look at now, it's all like concrete jungle, particularly, how many loops do we have in Chicago? Maybe two loops. Now we have like 7 loops in Beijing, which are basically just expanding to the satellite city and become very connected in the bigger, greater Beijing area. Do you know how many people? How many people know that Pekin actually is the exact opposite side of the globe, share the same latitude, right? Do you know what's the population of our greater Peoria area? Have an idea? Yeah, right. And again, Shanghai is actually the biggest city like New York. New York hosts a 7.8 million population, right? But this is a place now become the biggest port in the world, surpasses Singapore. but also become a lot of the headquarters of a big joint venture companies such as Coca-Cola, IBM, GM, right? And many more. I always like to talk a little bit about Shenzhen, a city that in the East Coast, lower that closer to Taiwan. This is a place now become the center of manufacturing places because of special tax exempt policy. Right? If I talk about that, I would say Shenzhen, I compare to Beijing, when I look at the New York in Queens, it almost looks like 20 years back where I grew up from, right, in Beijing. But if I'm talking about Shenzhen, it's more like maybe Palo Alto, Los Angeles, that just, a city filled with entrepreneurial spirit, right? That people always are thinking about having another company, having some different things. They were trying to be very adventurous of how their lifestyle could be and explore those possibilities. Let's have some lighthearted, questions to interact. This is actually a bazaar, right? Like in China, we have a lot of people, right? Because when we quantify, how is it really like, say, 22 million population versus a 7.8? What is the 15 million population in Beijing versus our 0.1, right? Maybe a little bit more in Peoria. How is that? What is this? Where is it? Take a guess. Someone. Just to speak up. Is this a parking lot? Or what is it?
Highway.
Yeah, it's actually very close. Very close. It's actually a parking. It's not parking lot. It's actually an entrance of airport, the Beijing International, airport. Right? This is all taxis, right? Because it looks just very alike. How about this? Can you guys see it? A lot of booths, a lot of people, a lot of filled with people. How did you guys, get into the, ag lab? Anyone recent graduate? This is our job fair, right? How about this one? You know it. It's a agriculture course. This is a beach. This is definitely carries a little bit extravagant manner, right? I have to search them just to impress you guys, It's not on a day-to-day basis. Looking at housing, right? I want to kind of cover housing and transportation in a very brief manner because people want to see pollution. We have a lot of social issues with that, right? But more importantly, I want to see that, to tell you what are the, why Chinese are experiencing in the past 40 years dramatic differences, right? Like why, we live in our house maybe 40 years, 60 years old house, and look, the neighborhood looks about the same. But in China, it's different. When I was born, 1980s, late 1980s, we lived in a house, kind of like our high school. If you're thinking of a high school building, right? We have a corridor and we have a classroom, one of each side. But the room is a lot more smaller, kind of like a studio with no restroom and kitchen, right? So this little square of a room is the entire 3 people lived in. Why 3 people? Only mom and dad and a single child, right? This is called a 3-family household. And then you're gonna see one after each other. This small apartment goes on for maybe 20 of the apartments. At the very end, you will see kitchen, 1 kitchen, and a couple restrooms, right? And if you want to take a shower, you gotta have some public place that you have to pay the money, to. This is a kind of a fainted memory because I was only maybe 3 years old, but I still kind of remember that, right? And you can hear the neighborhood quarreling with each other, mom and dad, So a lot of fun memories. And then now, if you're looking at a quantified number, this is a little bit small here, right? $2 per square footage is how much it costs. And now in Beijing, the square footage cost is around the $800. Do you know how much money per square footage of your house? In Dunlap area, the fanciest you're going to see is $150, right? And, as low as 50, maybe in Peoria area. But this is now 15 to 20 times of the annual income, right? We definitely have some housing bubbles in the big city, just like, everywhere in the world. Also, the transportation. Oops. The number of a passenger car per 1,000 people, basically, in right? Among 1,000 people, only one person owns a car. So it's a really scarce resources at the time. But now, it is more than 13% of the people owns a car. As I can see in big city, right? Like in talking to my friends and seeing how I grown up, I felt like even for a regular household, with the 3 people, we would at least have one car to some extent in the, in where I grew up from, right? So it's really become very popular, but also the parking resources become very scarce too. So we're gonna move on to the Chinese. Who doesn't want to learn Chinese? I'm not gonna teach you, like repeat after me today, but I want to tell you why I get so fascinated with the Chinese character. Have you ever tried to read Old English by Shakespeare? Can you understand maybe not even barely 50%, I would say, and that's in just a couple hundred years ago, right? It wasn't really long. But today I'm going to tell you, not only you can read and write, but you can comprehend a lot of those Chinese characters that were written 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Let's take a look. So Chinese characters originated 6,500 years ago, and this is called the ideophonographical, or you say, hieroglyphic, right? When we talk about hieroglyphic, we were thinking about maybe the old Egypt characters, right? Like a G is a little bird, and how many of those are hieroglyphic? There are 26, right? So they form in the words. But we have 56,000 of unique characters, or you say hieroglyphics there. And that's why until like I'm high school age, I'm still learning new Chinese symbols, right? Or say symbols or Chinese characters. And the original Chinese characters were recorded on these materials like turtle shell, astronomy utensil, and red wool scrolls. Let's take a look how many Chinese characters you could recognize. This is a person. Can you see that? Right? Oh, not passing gas, So this is how the modern Chinese characters over the 4,000 to 5,000 years has been looking like. This is called Ren as a person, a human, a person. How about 2 persons stand next to each other? Our Chinese folks have to be quiet. This is like, 3 years old. They're your Chinese 101. So what is that? Take a guess. Solo. Well, yeah, that could be that, right? How about 3 people like us? 3 was extravagant number. A group of people, right? And a person standing up. And when you see a bear in Gatlinburg, what you gonna do? Pretending to be big, right? So that is, Chinese character of the big. And Indian, I don't see a lot of our Indian folks, but in Indian, philosophy, they believe the human, the earth, the sky are all in one. So with a human in there, they have a sky, right? So I have 2 separate Chinese characters. It's called a ren, right? A person. That means everyone. And if I put a person in the confined area, what is that going to be? It's a prison. What was that? I didn't get that. So how about a person out of, in a prison, or, a prison person? What is that? Prisoner, right? And a big person is, yes. How about a big crowd? A big crowd is the public. And actually the German manufacturer called them as their symbol of Volkswagen. Means the public, everyone uses it, right? So this looks like what? This is a, ag lab. So what does it look like? I don't know when I was a kid, I think, I have learned something like the roots is much longer of the branch. Is that true? I needed to verify that. So this looks like what? A tree. Okay. So this is actually a wood, a timber, right? Somewhat to have a character of the treeless to it. How about two wood? Woods, woods, right? And forest. See, you guys know all this Chinese character. And laying a wood on the foundation, laying low is a foundation, and a big, remember, a big forest is large forest, right? Like Appalachian. The personal foundation is self. Actually, if you talk about the foundation of the sun, it's actually Japan, right? Because they see the eastern horizons and rises, and they call their country as the rising of the sun, right? The foundation of the sun. Look at this. We have a, what is that? A person laying next to the tree. What did he do? What did he do? Thinking about history, thinking about 3,000 years ago. China is a agrarian society, right? So he must be a farmer, right? What does he do? He must work and taking a rest under the tree shadow, right? So that is a rest. Okay, a little more guessing. Is the wood on a fire? Does it look like a bit of a fire, like bonfire in there? It's a burn. Right? I can go on and on. You know, I have a lot of those examples, right? But not all the 56,000 Chinese characters you can guess, right? Here. So this is a Chinese zodiac. You know, the Chinese have this different way of recording the years of their born, and when they ask you, hey, are you a puppy years, person? They actually trying to imply like, how old is he, right? Because every 12 years, by the animal science, it rotates again. Can you tell me where is the ram? Dodge ram, look. This one?
Yeah,
How about bull? Second, yeah. How about snake?
Right below second.
Yeah, it's pretty much like a snake. This is how hieroglyphic was being there in, for over 5,000 years. And you can see, probably birth year there. So next time on that year, that's either he is 12 years old, 24 years old, 36 years old, 28 years old. And this is the one, Chinese characters are written in a way, it's always in a little square, right? Like it's kind of like a cubed up. So it's either stroke down, stroke flat, and this is actually one of, this looks like a dragon, right? Would you agree? In a hieroglyphic manner, it looks kind of like an ancient dragon. 4 dragons. It's one of the most, character that has the most strokes, 64. So what's the meaning? It's redundant, right? It's kind of funny. Just to share. So writing in Chinese is a pretty simple manner. It's a left to right, top to bottom, and downstroke, and a stroke to the right, dot, and upward stroke. And then you're gonna have some iterations with that. Let's take a look at in the access of the painting. This is a Western maybe acrylic painting, oil painting. And left is a Chinese. Called ink paint, right? Can you tell some different traits